Square, we're Group 1, and this is the Ministry of Trade, Commerce and Industry. I'm here with my colleagues.
Vanessa Chinyemba,
Mlenga Mumba,
and Robert Emmanuel. I'm here to do the introduction for our ministry. Our ministry is the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry is a government ministry that is responsible for development of a global, competitive, sustainable commercial trade and industry base in Zambia. With this objective, sorry, I need to breathe. With this objective, the goals of this ministry is, the aim of our ministry is to bring about socio-economic development by developing a sustainable and global competitive social trade and industrial trade base. Our policy, a statement of goals that object. Sorry.
It's okay. I think you can carry on.
Our statement of goals, objectives and actions outlined by the government to provide guidance, SMEs. These are small to medium-sized businesses that maintain revenue. My colleagues will.
So we are from the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry. Under here, we look at, or rather we are responsible for the development of the sustainability of our economy. One of the policies that are currently running, or rather we mentioned at least 6 policies that are currently running, which is citizen economic empowerment, national intellectual property policy, national industrial policy, national trade policy. These are some of the policies that are currently running. And in order for us to formulate new policies, we had to look at some of the ones that are currently running so we could see where we could bring up a new and unique policy. We came up with the value addition policy. Although Zambia is endowed with these natural resources, the country has been having a negative trade balance, which means that the value of our exports is less than the value of our imports. When Zambia sells its natural resources, it sells them raw, and it sells them therefore at a cheaper price. So we see that Zambia relies heavily on imported goods like foodstuffs like cornflakes, and also electrical cables and pipes maybe. So if we as Zambians could produce processed, or rather export processed goods already, I think we would have a balance of trade, in that we will be able to have more money coming in from our exported goods. So as a solution to the problem that we're having, our ministry came up with this value addition policy that would encourage value addition to all exported goods. And under this policy, government would buy raw materials off local producers and sell it in a processed form to international customers. The government would achieve this by investing heavily in creating factories that would process natural resources from the raw materials into processed goods. Maize would be processed into cornflakes, which could be sold to outside Zambia, and also things like cables would turn cables from copper and sell them to other countries. So this is one of the policies that we came up with. My friend will run you through the other policy that we came up with.
So the other policy that we came up with was regional market trade policy for small business enterprises. So one way we could improve this policy, it's an amendment of one of the policies that's currently running, which is the Citizen Economic Empowerment Fund. So we are here to make sure that this policy is favorable to small business owners because they are the key to economic development in a country such as Zambia towards industrialization. So despite their numbers being in abundance, they are less likely to get credit or equity as compared to larger business owners when it comes to accessing finances to grow their businesses. So therefore, we would like to, as a ministry, we would like to make sure that the registration process is lenient for SMEs so they can thrive as well as larger businesses in Zambia, which will in turn lead to economic development. One other way we can improve the condition that currently SMEs are running under is to make sure that when foreign investors come, I'll give an example of a mall. When foreign investors come, they build malls and they expect Zambians to pay in dollars, which is very unfavorable for small business owners because they are currently facing financial challenges. So therefore, we would like to amend the policy that these people, when they come with these leases, they make sure that we as Zambians are paying in kwacha rather than in dollars. That's one policy that we came up with. My colleague here is going to align how we strategized and how we intend to implement these policies.
We're going to now go through how we, We're going to go through how we can We're going to go through now what strategy we can use to implement this policy or these two policies. Firstly, we have drafting. As you can see, we've already drafted our policies right now, and that's one thing that we've done. Secondly, it has to be taken to Parliament, and it has to be debated on see how,
It's okay.
Secondly, it has to be taken to Parliament. In Parliament there, it's debated on, and then they have to approve if it is proper for us to go on with the policy. And then it's taken to the office of the President. From there, when it's approved, then we can begin to sensitize on it, telling the Zambian people of what this policy is all about. And then in conclusion, there is no need for policies to be reversed in Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry. There is an urgent need for these policies to favor local traders, focus more on the small, medium enterprises to ensure and promote the growth, development and competitiveness of commercial trade and industrial sectors. Financial independence of Zambian citizens is heavily dependable on amendments and the implementations of projects. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. I have a question on the value addition policy. What are some of the challenges that you expect with implementing this one? I know you've spoken about it and how you feel is something missing, but I feel like I've heard this before. I've heard many people talk about this. So now I want to understand what you think could be some of the challenges you'd experience in trying to implement it.
Thank you. I think that we need to come up with a proper strategy. We need to evaluate in order for us to see what products we can be able to produce, or rather products that can be able to penetrate in that particular market. So I think we'd have to come up with a very strong strategy that is going to help us implement that.
Do you have any suggestion of what kind of strategy that would be? It doesn't have to be to answer. It could be anyone in your group. It's an open question.
Okay, in addition to what she said, one of the challenges that we are likely to face as a ministry, obviously our competitors are buying these products at very low prices. So the strategy that we'll implement, that we'll use to make sure that Zambians are put first, is by first convincing the government of the reasons why we would like Zambians to create factories of our own. Because it adds to tax. It will increase because the number of goods that are going out will lessen because we are able to produce our own goods. So that's one strategy. We'll convince the government to say these raw materials will go at a higher price rather than now that they are going, because we are heavily dependent on other countries producing our raw materials into finished goods.
And in line with that, maybe I just wanted to find out, are there any Zambian companies that you know that are very competitive, that can compete at a regional level in line with the policies that you're putting in place? I'm sure you want Zambian companies to actually benefit. Are there specific examples of Zambian companies you have in mind that are involved in production?
Yes, Easy Noodles, that's a Zambian-owned company. It's owned by Miss Musonda, rather. And Trade Kings as well, it's a Zambian-owned company, so they would compete. Already, currently, we are selling products to other countries that are produced by Trade Kings. So we are confident enough that if we empower our own Zambian citizens, we can compete at national level or international level, rather, because our raw materials are up to standard.
Okay, yes. And in competing, obviously, at the regional level and international level, there could be certain existing trade agreements that maybe Zambia can take advantage of. Are there any regional trade agreements that you know of that Zambia can take advantage of? And you've also mentioned something to do with Zambia's trade with the European Union. Which agreement are we speaking to exactly here?
I don't quite understand your question.
So if we are to trade with other countries,
yes,
just trade in general, there are certain regulations. Maybe you can be part, like in this, you can be part of maybe a group of countries that have come together and they've signed a trading agreement where they say we're going to give each other the following favors or conditions. So in light of the fact that your ministry, the Ministry of Commerce, is responsible for ensuring that there's a good trading environment in Zambia, and you are also trying to look out for markets for the products that are coming through from, let's say, Easy Noodles, Trade Kings. You want them to penetrate other markets. So my question was, what trade agreements do you think we can take advantage of in the region that can make it easier for Zambian products to leave our border, go into other countries, especially within the African continent?
Okay, we would take advantage of the multilateral trade agreements that are currently there between Zambia and European Union, European countries rather, because it's easier that way.
Which one specifically? Because when you say multilateral, it's a blanket narration of the existing trade agreements. Is there one specific agreement that you know of that is between Zambia and the European Union? Okay, how about in the African context? What exactly is the ministry doing to help connect the Zambian manufacturers within the contract? Are there any trade agreements that you are negotiating currently as a ministry? Okay. I don't know if...
Yes, I do have another question.
Yeah.
There's a point you mentioned on the policy of regional market trade policy. Which one did you say this is linked to amongst the existing ones?
Citizen empowerment, the citizen empowerment policy.
Citizen economic empowerment.
Citizen economic empowerment, yes, thank you.
How are they linked?
They are linked in the sense that a number of SMEs are not favored under that particular empowerment fund when it comes to getting funds. They are not favored because the requirements are too high. I can give an example of one of the requirements that you need to register as a small business owner. If they tell you to say, we need 10 employees, and I'm starting up as a small business owner, it will not be favorable to me because I don't have 10 employees, meaning I will operate informally. So it will reduce the tax that government is supposed to receive.
So with that said, I know one part of your question was unique policies. Do you think this is unique, especially that you're tying it to something that already exists?
We are confident that it is unique.
Depending on the strategy that we come up with, we would have to make sure it's effective enough to be unique. I think the effectiveness of it would be the unique part of our policy being implemented.
I had another question, Mandela. More recently, your agency, the Zambia Development Agency, under the Ministry of Commerce, you had started the process of reviewing the ZDA Act of 2015. I wanted to find out how far you have gone and what exactly you are likely to change in the act that we had.
I currently don't know how it's going on that treat.
Okay, but this is something that is sitting under the Ministry of Commerce. Maybe if I can ask some other question under the Ministry of Commerce. In terms of trade within the region, there's the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. What are some of the benefits that you see Zambia getting out of that agreement, and what exactly do you think our local manufacturers need to do to tap into those benefits?
Okay.
I think that the moment that you want to penetrate in a particular market, you have to analyze the situation. You have to look at what your competitors provide. So we would have to. I think Zambia is. We would take that as an advantage, as in we would see how they produce most of their products, and we would see where we're lacking. We would try until we get the better end product rather. Yes.
Just one last question. Towards the end on your implementation strategy, you talked about how you would only sensitize at the very end. So sensitization of your particular policy would be the last thing you do. I'm wondering why you wouldn't want it to be added somewhere in the middle or somewhere in the beginning, just to at least let the general public know about this one policy you want to implement. Why go for the very end? Why can't you start somewhere in the middle?
We were thinking in case when we take it to Parliament and it's debated on and it's not approved, we wouldn't want to sensitize people on something that is not yet been amended or something that is not yet been done. So we'd rather when we have it approved by the Parliament or by the Office of the President, then we can sensitize on it more.
But Mangala, won't that be a problem?
I
Because
think
the
it
general
will.
expectation is to ensure that people provide input before it is approved.
Exactly, I was going to say that I feel like people would want to support your idea. I think it helps to get support from the general policies about, so as you present it and before it's approved, the country already understands. Any other questions?
I don't have any. Otherwise, thank you so much in terms of the quality research and information shared with us this far.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
My name is Mama Emma.
My name is Ceremonies. I'm Vanessa Kangongo.
Okay, so we are under tourism. We were told to formulate policies about tourism. I'll start by the introduction. The first tourism policy was adopted in 1997 in order to take into account the development of tourism environment. So actually, these were the policies that were formulated to help in the guidance of the natural resources that we have. So the process, which ran from September 2011, which included the presidential and local government elections, restarted shortly after the whole formulation of these policies. So in the new global tourism environment, Zambia is emerging as an attractive tourist destination with huge potential to exploit these opportunities. Allow me to go to the situation analysis of these policies that we came about. So Zambia's tourism is rich in cultural heritage, which consists of 76 tribes and diverse of cultural traditional ceremonies, 6 museums, which reposition rich culture, tradition, and historical artifacts. The Zambezi River, the 20 national parks, and 36 game reserves, just to name a few. So the tourism development challenges that led to the formulation of these policies, we'll talk of the infrastructure, the community participation, the marketing and branding, skills training in tourism and hospitality industry. So the policy direction is it provides the measures, the objective and guidelines of addressing some of the outlined challenges that we face under the tourism sector. So the vision of the Ministry of Tourism and Arts is to make Zambia exciting and growth destination that realizes its full potential of rewards tourists and unique, authentic and treasured experience. So I think from this short introduction, which led to our formulation of these two policies, I would call the next presenter just to introduce the first policy. Thank you.
Having looked at the introduction, I'll talk about the first policy which is to be implemented. And these are the following measures that have been put in place for this policy to be implemented successfully. Number one, I'll talk about the local participation. Under local participation, we are going to introduce incentives such as lowering rates cost of board and lodging for citizens to promote local tourism. I think most of local residents find it very difficult to tour our own country. Why? Because they are very expensive, and I'm one of them. I come from Flera and I want to tour Livingstone, and I look at transport, it's very expensive. So yeah, we have to introduce that. By doing that, we'll be bringing in more revenue in the country. Number two, we are going to introduce sports tourism. We are going to achieve this by encouraging and influencing the cabinet to pump money into the construction of sports infrastructure. By doing so, one day we can even hold Olympics, which is going to bring in more tourists. Yes, and again, number two measure, the measure that we have put in place is funding of all traditional ceremonies by the government. In Zambia, we have 72 traditional ceremonies, but only 2 are celebrated. That's the Nchwala and the Kuomboka ceremonies. These 2 are the most celebrated ceremonies, but why not incorporate all of them and turn it into a tourist attraction? Thank you, that's all I had.
Okay, so the second policy that we formulated was need to respond flexibly to changing market conditions. So you understand that modern society now are becoming more demanding than ever. Also, tourists are now having like a lot of decisional making processes. You find that they are looking in a situation whereby they want to explore and look at things that they haven't seen before. Gone are the days where you have tourists from tourists come in the country and they would look at the Zambezi River, the Victoria Falls. Now they want to experience things like what are some of the new things that have come. It's not only about wildlife and wildlife that you can say, okay, this is tourism, so on and so forth, but even in the way that you prepare certain things, like how is your sport activities in the country? In Zambia, what kind of a sport, what new sport is Zambia having that they do not have in other countries? And then the other measure on trying to respond to market condition, you talk about investment incentives. So we should use tourism to open up more remote areas of the country where perhaps local investors may be unwilling to invest. The other point on the measures is monitoring and evaluation of tourism programs. So those are the measures under the second policy that we formulated. From here, I'll go to the implementation framework. So the policy framework will help the industry generate income, create jobs, business growth, education, training, as well as my colleague talked about training of like educating people about sport tourism. So the framework is arranged according to the role of each principal, or should I say stakeholders, who have the government, who have the private sector, who have the local communities, who have the civil society as well. So the government will incorporate the Ministry of Chiefs and Tradition, will also incorporate the Ministry of Finance, because she talked about beautifying other tourist attractions that we have in Zambia. In an example where we have a tourist site, maybe in Imbala, there will be need for road networks. So we'll invite the Ministry of Finance to fund also the ceremonies that we are trying to incorporate in this that are not celebrated. We'll also incorporate the Ministry of Tourism, the Ministry of Transport, Works, Supply and Communication. Thank you.
Okay. Having all that said, we look at the monitoring and the evaluation of the ministry. Monitoring of the policy will be done in two levels. Individual institutions and departments will develop implementation plans that will require to prepare and submit progress report and implementation of the work basis on the focusing on the predetermined indicators of each objection. So simply we'll just, after everything is, according to what my colleagues have said, when everything is done and everything has been put in place, when the Ministry of Finance has already done their funding and the government is also working hand in hand with us, they want to monitor and to know the direction which everything that we talked about is heading and is headed. So by monitoring each and everything that will be put in place, this will be done on the annual basis. Like for example, if we put these policies at the beginning of the year, by the end of the year, we should come up and show results on the things that we are trying to put across and what we try to talk about. The evaluation of the tourism policy. This shall review the performance and the application of the policy based on the annual process, as I said, the progress and the reports and the progress reports and makes system evaluation will include the key performance and the indicators, as well as provide reasons and explanation for non-attachments. For example, if the Ministry of Finance has given us the money, they'll want to know where that money is going, and they want to know the results and what we're headed about. So if we do not have the reasons why the money is going, for example, like my colleague mentioned, where we want other traditions and other ceremonies to be acknowledged in the system, apart from the Komboka ceremony that is already celebrated. If the Ministry of Finance gives us the finances, we should have the reason, and we should also have the results that we're going to end up with, and we should also show results that are going to come out from each and everything that money was given for. The midterm evaluation will be conducted after 2 years of the implementation, while final evaluation will be done at the end of the implementation period of the policy. So this simply means in between the 4-year plan, between those years, we have to make sure to say the ministry is doing something according to the policy line on the money that was given or maybe the finance that was funded to us. So we should come up with results that are going to work in line and hand in hand to say each and everything that we worked for is being produced, and each and everything that we asked for is working hand in hand with what we want. So in conclusion, the government police and the tourism sector in Zambia will act responsibly with respect to sustainable use of the environment at all times. In general, the tourism industry shall be in forefront in adopting practices that enhance the sustainable use of the environment, and also purpose to advocate for the industry as the key economic driver. Thank you.
Like having a TV station that talks about tourism.
Has that helped to save the tourism industry?
Okay. Going hand in hand for the fact that the Ministry of Tourism still is the main drive of income in the country. So I believe we sensitize our local tourists, maybe like on the fact that the Ministry of Health is also working hand in hand with the Ministry of Tourism for the fact that they are providing hand sanitizer and always to mask up. So before you come in contact with us, before you travel, even if you want to explore the country, we'll make sure to say you have sanitizer with you and you've got something like mask and everything, because it does not just protect you, but it's also protecting people from outside the places that you might go.
There's an interesting point that she raises with regards to the Ministry of Tourism being the major contributor towards the country's economic growth. Any numbers to back that up? How much does the tourism industry in Zambia contribute to the country's GDP, or in terms of employment? How many jobs does it create, or has it created in the past, according to your records at the Ministry of Tourism?
On the number exactly, I wouldn't. That's something that maybe we might have not researched on, but we know to say this is a sector that provides employment, not just on the people that are educated, but just even the people out there, maybe the people working the game parks and everything and around. It provides a lot of employment to just even the people working around the same areas.
I don't have any questions, but I just point as maybe of what I would have loved to see in this presentation. I would have loved to see a summary of the tourism industry, not like half the presentation, but just very brief, and then a clear understanding of the policies. I didn't get that. And at this point, I'm still asking myself, but where are the policies? Because that's a major part of the question. And also, even if you argue and say these are the policies, I'm also thinking, if these are they really unique? I would have loved to hear something I haven't heard before. But I've heard of this before, and I've also heard people talk about some of the challenges that would come in place in trying to implement some of the things spoken about. So I would have loved you to come and give me something different, something I haven't heard, and maybe a clear understanding of how these things can be put in place. I think the key words in your question were unique. So I haven't got that unique part. But thank you.
I think for me, if you were to just give a sum up in responding to two questions before you leave the set. One is around incentives. You talked about the need to provide incentives so that you can allow for growth of the tourism industry. Can you share with us the specific incentives that you're talking about? And secondly, how would you describe government's response to COVID-19 in relation to tourism?
Okay, so on the investment incentives, we talked about the use of tourism to open up remote areas, where maybe, for example, we have local investors are able to invest in those remote areas, maybe because of distance or something. So maybe it can be in a way that that we allow local investors to like invest in those remote areas that we are
So what
talking
do
about.
you do with the distance? You
With the
bring
we talked about
closer to the investor, or
we talked about the road network, where we have a clear road network, and also maybe coming up with malls in remote areas, because at the end of the day, they want entertainment, they want to have good infrastructure, they want good roads. So maybe putting up those shopping malls, infrastructure, and so on, and also good health.
COVID-19, what's your response?
To COVID-19.
You don't necessarily have to answer.
Yes. No. Like you said, the response towards COVID-19 and how is the government working hand?
Effective? Has it been poor?
No, it has been very effective for the fact that the government also looks at the country, knowing that they want to provide and make sure that the country is safe. So the government has really been helpful, and they've really responded in a very, very active way by making sure that the country has whatever they need. Like I said earlier, on making sure that everybody is educated about the masking up and providing, because no one is, when they just introduced the hand sanitizer and everything, no one was ready to access them. We didn't even know where to find them. But the government has made it sure and clear and possible to us, we can just find them anywhere. Yes, so the response has been very good.
And also on the fact that it does not only rely on tourism as the only economic driver, maybe we can talk about other ways that the country can generate income, unlike just tourism. The way we've moved from mining and maybe investing more on tourism, we can also find other economic sector or industry that we can invest in to generate this income, unlike just relying on tourism, because we know that it affects in a situation where we've been hit by a pandemic like COVID. So I think diversification is also important in these sectors.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. In addition to what she has said, we can also make agriculture the main source of income, because during in times of this pandemic, mines have closed and we have maybe no tourists in the country. This is where agriculture is going to come in.
And how is it connected to tourism? Isn't it a different sector?
They can work hand in hand.
They can work hand in hand.
Because when you talk about
revenues.
If you talk about agriculture, you are also talking about tourism, because they both involve the environment. And as the Ministry of Tourism, we are not trying to come up with activities that will mess up the environment. So we can say they are working hand in hand, because we are promoting sustainable use of the environment.
No. Thank you.
Thank you so much.